We're at Cuts today and we're about to interview Johnnie Sapong. When would you say that your career sparked off, and can you tell us a little bit about Cuts and how you started?
I think that fundamentally for me hairdressing was a way to kind of I think sort of piss off my parents, if I can use such a word to describe it. Basically, I come from a West African family, Ghanaian. You know, my father was very sort of clear with us when we were growing up. I'm one of three brothers, and it was about the fact that, you know, you needed to kind of build your foundations for life. And as far as he was concerned, him being an accountant, you know, his sons were going to be doctors, lawyers, or, you know, bankers, and you know, have, you know, an academic career, and which was interesting, because you sort of, I think as a teenager, you're always sort of thinking your parents don't know enough about anything, and they're just like against you. Yeah. But I think as time's gone on, I kind of sort of highly value the values that, you know, my parents instilled in me from the very beginning, even though, you know, I would laugh about it now and sort of say that you know, hairdressing was, it came into the realm because I wanted to go to art school. Hairdressing really started for me in the sort of mid-80s. It was about 1985, and I had a friend at school whose sister was a artistic director at a place called Morton Brown. They gave me an opportunity because she needed an assistant in the summer holidays. I was in between my studies for A-levels, which were, you know, again, academic, like chemistry, physics, maths, and English literature. The journey began at Morton Brown, and what I think was clear to me at that time, when I was looking for, you know, how I was going to sort of become a hairdresser, it was much more about the fact that there was inspiring people within the salons. You know, there was great hairdressers that were doing interesting things, whether it was for, you know, their clients in the salon and creating things. And salon life in the 80s was very much about the fact that, you know, the musical stars of the day, or actresses or models, would come into the salon and get their hair done or get their colour done. And so as an apprentice, this is what you were being filled with, was this whole sort of world of glamour that you really only saw on the television or in sort of magazines and stuff. And if you think about it from the aspect of you know, I grew up on a council estate, you know, in West London, and, you know, for us it was about the fact that you made your own fashion. You know, we were inspired by you know, break dancing and hip hop and reggae music and you know, punk and all these different areas were really part of your upbringing, part of your culture. And so when, you know, hairdressing was presented to me almost by default, what came alive though was the aspect of creating with your hands and being able to sort of do something that actually, without thinking about the clients and your subjects, or your you know, the person that you're transforming, it was much more about the creation. But at the same time you were learning so many other things, like how to communicate with people, you know, about etiquette and stuff like that. And so from the sort of Morton Brown journey, I met James LeBon, who was the founder of Cuts.
So you spoke a little bit about your parents. In your biography, you explained that you kind of rebelled almost, just because, you know, you didn't get a proper job, like how your dad wanted you to be an accountant and so on. How would you say that they see your career now?
Well, I think they're really very proud parents, but I think that was a lot to do with the way that, you know, we see things and our expectations, fears, and also the capacity to learn. And I think what's happened in the time that I've been in this, you know, doing hair, being in the fashion industry, I've been able to open their eyes to another way of doing things, in the sense that I think they could clearly see that I was very passionate about what I was doing.
So hairstyle can be seen to be an important part of almost visual representation. How important do you think that is to personal style?
I think that, you know, hair is something that, you know, we're all born with. You know, it's different textures, different colours, different shapes, lengths, and I think it's such an integral part of one's identity, in a sense. And that's not to mean that, you know, if your hair's not done in a certain way, then it's not right. It's much more about the fact that as humans, we have hair, you know, and it's something that will always be a point of difference and can change, you know, in a moment. And that's where I think that, you know, being the hairdresser or the hairstylist, there's something within you that you know, wields a certain amount of you know, power, I guess, but I don't really see it as you're not controlling somebody, but you are possibly offering them some empowerment by being able to help them cultivate or create something.
So how would you say that you can kind of help someone achieve this? So you spoke about identity, but how ultimately could someone achieve that?
Well, it's about taking the chance, isn't it? Taking those steps. You know, if you're, you know, you always wear your hair a certain way. You know, it's my job to kind of basically open you up and get you to kind of see that actually, you know what, there's a possibility that it might look nice like this. But if we don't try it, we're never going to know.
Fashion Week is fast approaching. What hair trends can you predict or hope to see? What
we're seeing right now for autumn winter is that, you know, there was a lot of influences with design from the 60s, and from a hair perspective, it's normally about the fact that, you know, there's so many things that we've seen before, but what we're trying to do is actually just present them in a new way. And I think it's kind of interesting because you may sort of see at one point, okay, there's big hair, or, you know, there's waves, and so it relates to 40s, or it relates to the 20s or something like that. So I think it's always about cycles, and a lot of the time, until you've seen the collections and you've seen, you know, you've worked with the designers to kind of come up with what that woman is or what that man is in their identity, you know, there's a whole realm of things that are spinning in your mind. You know, it might be the fact that I see, you know, a girl cycling up the street in Soho and she's wearing her hair in a strange ponytail. But already for me, I'm thinking about how I can adapt that to a catwalk and put that into that situation. But what you'll also see is that, you know, for instance, with the red carpet now for award season, like for the BAFTAs or for you know, the Golden Globes or the Oscars or something like that, when you see certain things on the carpet, those looks can sometimes transcend into what's going on with fashion as well, because, you know, the designers are putting out their premium gowns. Generally, you know, it's a one-off or it's a couture piece or something like that, and it has a big part of influencing us. You know, if you look at the current covers of magazines and stuff like that, you know, everyone has a homage to Bowie at the moment, and there's a big Bowie resurgence. So you'll see a lot of fashion shoots based around, you know, his imagery and you know, the different characters that he was showing off at that time. But again, it's I think very influenced by other things than just fashion. You know, you know, people are inspired by art. They are inspired by music as well. But that also forms part of, you know, identities in some sense, where it's again about people feeling like they want to belong, I think.
Yeah. Would you say, like, obviously you touched upon it about the way in which you feel inspired, But would you say you source it through kind of knowing that you need to source inspiration, or is it just something that kind of, you know, just comes to you where you might be walking down the street? Or
it's a combination. I do feel like, you know, I draw a lot of influences from the street. You know, there's a lot of things that come from, you know, being able to stop and have a cup of coffee sometimes, you know, and you're looking around and engaging because it's all very visual. And I think that's one of the most interesting things is that, you know, your eyes are, you know, such a great receptive for information, and as much as you're taking in things because you're listening to stuff and you're drawing on these areas, it's what you see, and so from the perspective of gaining ideas or you know, researching stuff, they will come from topics, but you then want to go back to somebody with a way to kind of engage them with what you're thinking, and sometimes it's not easy to explain it, so you need to show them. So that's where it comes in a period of time. So that reference that is, you know, 1920s is totally correct for these outfits or this designer, you know, in a sense.
So the Sunday Times has described you as probably the best hairstylist in the world. How does that make you feel, and what do you think that kind of sets you apart from every other person who's interested in hairstyling?
Well, I think that it is probably due to the fact that, you know, you're or I am deemed or believed to be at the you know, the top of my game. But in the same sense, what that means to me is that, you know, people value your they value you as a person, but they value your ideas, they value your input, they feel that you're a good person to have on board as part of a team because you can take direction, but you've also got an opinion and you can give, you know, or do what's required, but also with your own take, you know. And it's a certain amount about being able to do hair, but it's also about being able to communicate and get on with people. And that's where I sort of feel like, you know, my clients would definitely, I hope, always be able to kind of say that, you know, we love having Johnnie around because, you know, he brings that energy into the space, or he's able to communicate that energy and get us into the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Why do you think it's important to give each client a unique and individual experience at the studio?
I think, you know, what that all comes back to again is that, you know, I've always had the belief that every person that sits in the chair is their own person, and, you know, no matter what I'm trying to execute or, you know, share with them, it's not, I guess it goes back to an old fundamental of it's not what you wear, it's how you wear it. And that's about, you know, instilling that value in them. And so being able to have that one-to-one time is, you know, generally what I do on set. You know, like if I'm, you know, in the studio getting a model ready for a cover or a photo shoot, in the same way if we're doing, you know, an album cover or an advertising job, you know, it's about the vibes. You know, you're trying to create this environment and get this person into the spirit of them just feeling a little bit special about themselves. And that's where, you know, the idea or the concept of, you know, one-to-one styling sort of came about from, you know, me really realizing that there was, you know, just the everyday person that would like to have that experience or channel themselves into that environment. And so that's where the studio kind of was created, really.
So you spoke a lot about your career and you've had an amazing ride through it all, but what would you say that has been your main highlight through it all?
I think my main highlight in my journey of life was probably getting married and having 4 beautiful children.
What would you say is the best advice that you've been given and it's kind of stuck with you till today?
I think the biggest piece of advice, which is continual, is just to be able to face your fears and follow your dreams.